What is something that is widely known, but known incorrectly? Egyptians didn't worship cats. They had a god who was part cat. But to say that they worshipped all cats would be like saying Christians worship all Middle Eastern carpenters. A few decades back, some archaeologists discovered a field of thousands of buried jars containing mummified cats. Almost all of these cats were about 1 year old and died violently. Severed vertebrae, cracked skulls, the works. These dead cats were an offering to Bastard. And a lucrative business. They weren't gods on earth like the Apis bull. I think it's widely known at this point, but defibrillators do not restart hearts. If someone's heart stops beating, shocking, it will not do a thing. The only thing to do is chest compressions. Defibrillation is used to return a heart to sinus rhythm. Fibrillation is basically a change in heart rhythm. It gets a lot more specific, but a lot of the time you'll hear a fib or fibratrial fibrillation and ventricular fibrillation respectively. The shock from the paddles will hard reset the heart's electronics and return them to normal. Movies and TV for the most part use defibrillators as dramatic representations of near death, and thus get it wrong very often. Hope this is informative. The plans are worthless. Quote by Eisenhower. People who are terrible at management and planning love to quote this to justify their incompetence. They of course always leave out the but planning is indispensable part of it. I was told in school that old civilizations believed the world was flat. It's a notion that's only maybe 100 years old. Originally used as a slur to mock people you thought were primitive. The ancient Greeks knew the earth was round and had a pretty close estimate to its radius. That you swallow 8 spiders in your sleep each year. It was a fact created in a comic in 1993 that poked fun at people for believing ridiculous facts, and was then subsequently passed on by word of mouth and became accepted. Alcohol before bed will help you sleep. It only helps you fall asleep faster, but since it inhibits REM you won't necessarily get good sleep. A lot of trivia loving people know that in pre-modern times, people would drink beer instead of water. The implication being that medieval people were just shit-faced 24/7. Insert quip about people switching to tea and coffee just in time for the Enlightenment. However, what's often left overlooked is that the beer they were drinking was an extremely weak table beer of 1% ABV or less. Carrots don't make your eyesight better. You don't have to wait 30 minutes to swim after eating. Citations sure would be helpful. For some of the comments here, maybe the idea that information posted online is inherently credible is something that's widely known, but known incorrectly. That cops can't lie to you must admit, being cops if asked. Note lying to a cop may be a crime however. A mother rabbit won't kill its babies if it has been touched by a human or something else. Neither will a mother bird abandon the nest if you touch the eggs. Turns out that birds have a really bad sense of smell. I'm pretty sure this is something parents made up to keep their kids from messing around in birds' nests while climbing trees. Rational choice theory. Most people assume it means acting on Vulcan like pure logic and reason, which would kind of imply that there is always the perfect solution and people just have to act rationally to come to this solution. That is not quite correct. Rational choice means acting the way which you expect will be the most beneficial to you with the lowest stakes effort possible. It's a cost-benefit calculation, if I remember this correctly, but I'm pretty sure that you use an before a word where the beginning letter is a vowel a-e-i-o-u, and a if it's a consonant, when it's actually if the word starts with a consonant sound, then it's a, and if it's a vowel sound, it's an. Antisocial doesn't mean shy or introverted, it means someone frequently acts in ways that are contrary to social orders such as harming others, stealing, and lying. Edit while I'm at it. Schizophrenia isn't multiple personality disorder. It describes someone who primarily suffers from psychosis, which mostly just means they are disconnected from the reality the rest of us are experiencing by hallucination sensory experiences, usually sight and sound. that are not real, or delusions, beliefs that are not real. There's a lot more to it, but that's the cliff notes. Okay, so I guess all I'm gonna say is when you're thinking multiple personality disorder, you're usually thinking of dissociative identity disorder. Dissociation is a big change in mood and behavior accompanied by gaps in memory or time passing differently. It's usually associated with a trauma stress response. I thought I had sufficiently expressed that there is a lot of debate about this disorder that I'm not getting in the middle of. And I mean a lot. And most of the time, when you're talking about OCD, you're actually talking about OCPD. In obsessive compulsive disorder, the person is plagued by obsessions, thoughts that compel them to engage in compulsions behaviors, while contamination and frequent cleaning of self and surroundings are a common obsession compulsion pair. Neatness isn't the only presentation. Often, in fact, OCD is associated with hoarding behaviors because of some obsession with not throwing things away. OCPD, or obsessive compulsive personality disorder, is much closer to what most people think of when they think of OCD. To a person with OCPD, rigidity and rules are more important to them than the needs and feelings of other people. So when someone yells at you and hurts you emotionally because something hasn't been done right, that itself is much more consistent with OCPD than OCD. Although it's not unheard of for someone with OCD to have difficulty relating to others at the height of their anxiety. In quantum physics, a superposition collapses when it is observed. Essentially, at the moment it's observed, it has to pick which position it's in. People hear this and believe that humans, or life, has some mystical property that causes the world to react to us when we look upon it, as though reality is preparing itself for our eyes. In actual fact, a superposition being observed just means that it interacts with something outside of the superposition. It is observed by some other matter, which needs to know whether it collides or passes through. For example, raccoons in the day means they have rabies. Don't drink the Kool-Aid is based on the Jonestown massacre, but at Jonestown they drank Flavor Aid. The Dunning-Kruger effect. Lots of people think it means that the most ignorant or unskilled people are as confident about their performance as experts are. Google Dunning-Kruger. Check out the images, and you'll see a lot of graphs showing amount stupid, where the unskilled have way higher confidence than those of average skill. The actual paper showed something very different, that the most unskilled people tended to rate themselves as about average, and then confidence rose with ability, although slower than it ideally should have. So the most skilled people tended to underrate themselves slightly. Furthermore, later mathematical analysis of the study indicates that most of the effect can be explained by statistical artifacts and doesn't reflect a real phenomenon. For all intents and purposes, not for all intensive purposes. You can see the Great Wall of China from space. If you could see it from space, you could see all the highways too. That it used to be common for people to die in their mid-30s. Even worse, the related notion that people in their 30s would be geriatric, like gray hair and all that. Life expectancy used to be around 35. Yes, because a whole lot of babies and little kids died, which was balanced out by plenty of people making it well into their 60s and 70s and even beyond. Sure, there were plenty of younger adults dying too, like in childbirth, and of infections and injuries that would be treatable now. But the bottom line is, people back then lived only a little bit shorter lives than we did. Old age has always happened roughly when it does now, and 35 has never been a common age to die. That we only use a certain percentage of our brain. Edit, I'm referring to the myth that we only use 10% of our brain and that somehow, if we could unlock it, we would be capable of telekinesis or something like what we see in the movie Lucy. If only we used 100%. People would realize that's a myth. That the US beat the Soviets at hockey in 1980 for the gold medal in the Winter Olympics. That win only put us in the gold medal game against Finland, which we won. That deoxygenated blood is blue. All human blood is red. Deoxygenated is a slightly deeper maroon color, but still. Horseshoe crab blood is blue though. Rainforests are the lungs of the world. Yes, rainforests are important, but don't have any comparison with lungs in their function. Also, this creates the idea that rainforests are important because they produce oxygen. This is only true because of the linear negative relationship between oxygen and CO2. While we should worry about increasing CO2, we don't have to worry about decreasing oxygen cause we would still be able to breathe even if all the forests are gone. Final misconception: most rainforests don't accumulate net carbon nor produce net oxygen. Plants and ecosystems do this as long as they grow, but most rainforests, peatlands excluded, are stable when it comes to carbon exchange. For example, they accumulate as much as they dissimulate. Still, we have to protect them, of course, because if we burn all that's there, it will have a massive impact on global warming and biodiversity. That begging the question is used for something that leads to another question. Begging the question is actually a logical fallacy, also known as circular reasoning. To decimate is used as in to kill or destroy something to almost complete annihilation. What it actually means is to kill or destroy 1/10 of something. It comes from an old form of punishment where 1/10 of a unit was killed. If you were to decimate a 20-piece McNugget, it would actually mean just eating not the whole thing quickly. But I guess words change with their use and the incorrect way is more appropriate now. Cats are not naturally solitary, but have complex social lives. Cats usually need socialization with other cats. Many cats who are raised alone or were taken from their mothers too early develop deep behavioral deficits which often manifest themselves as depression or extremely violent behavior. Please don't raise kittens alone. That a woman sued McDonald's and won a large sum of money for spilling coffee on her lap. Widely cited as a case of the court system out of control and a money grubber abusing the system. In actuality, the coffee was so hot it melted this poor woman's vagina together, and it was way hotter than it should have been. She had third-degree burns over her body, and it was definitely McDonald's error. McDonald's PR and legal have spun this case so far from the truth that it's widely cited as a legal system abuse that they were the victim of. And it worked. Ask anyone you know about this case. They are going to scoff and say that everyone knows coffee is hot. This woman shouldn't have gotten anything. The coffee wasn't just hot, it was freaking nuclear. The sun is yellow-orange, but it is not. The sun is white. The particles in the atmosphere makes it seem yellow, just as it also makes it seem almost red when setting. The actual saying, "Jack of all trades, master of none," is oftentimes better than a master of one. I'm a professor, so I have seen people do incredible deep dives for their dissertation and such. The problem is they are an inch wide and a mile deep. It makes it hard for them to get a job. I did a double minor and have never had trouble getting a tenure line. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.